All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, to me at least, hypnotherapy.
It's always interesting to peek behind the curtain, right?
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, the curtain is the mind of the hypnotherapists themselves.
Right.
We've got this doctoral project that you sent over, and it really digs into how confident hypnotherapists feel during those sessions and if that confidence even matters, for the outcome.
Yeah, we think of these hypnotherapists as these unshakable figures, these gurus of calm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Effortlessly just guiding you into a trance.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting project that used these really in-depth interviews with 12 licensed mental health professionals who are also trained hypnotherapists to get at that question.
Right, so they're speaking from experience here.
Exactly.
Not just, like, textbook knowledge.
And it's really about the meaning that they're attributing to these experiences. So it's not just what they felt, but why it mattered to them.
Interesting.
And they really wanted to get at this idea of confidence as a form of performance.
Okay, so almost like they're putting on a show in a way.
Well, one of the therapists that was interviewed for this project actually compared it to being on stage, said that hypnotherapy has to be like a performance.
Really?
Where it's not enough to just believe in what you're doing. You need to project that confidence outward, too.
Wow, so like your posture, your tone of voice, even the way you're breathing, it's all part of the equation.
It's all about creating an atmosphere of confidence that the client can literally feel.
That's wild.
Yeah, and one of the therapists talked about how important it is to be aware of your own physical state because, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think, our brains have these things called mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons. Okay, you're going to have to explain this because now you've got me intrigued.
Yeah, they're basically these fascinating cells that fire up both when we do something and when we watch someone else doing it.
Oh, wow.
So in the context of hypnotherapy, if the therapist is tense, the client might unconsciously mirror that tension.
Oh, wow.
Right. But on the flip side, if they are calm and composed, that can actually help the client relax on a neurological level.
So it's almost like their calmness, or I guess their lack thereof, can be contagious in a way.
Exactly. And it makes sense if you think about it, right? I mean,
yeah.
Would you feel comfortable surrendering control to someone who seemed unsure of themselves?
Probably not, to be honest.
Right. So confidence breeds confidence.
It's true. It's true. It's like going to a comedian who doesn't believe in their own jokes. You're not going to laugh.
Exactly.
But you mentioned that it's not just about, faking it till you make it.
Right.
There are some real, roots to this confidence.
And a lot of that comes from the tangible results that they see, right? Like seeing the positive changes in their clients.
Okay.
So it becomes this positive feedback loop. The more they see it work, the more confident they become, and then the more effective they become in turn.
So experience is definitely key here.
It is.
But what happens when, even with all that experience, those self-doubt gremlins creep in? Because it's got to happen to everyone, right?
Oh, it definitely happens. And that's actually what we're going to explore next, that kind of emotional roller coaster of what it feels like to be a hypnotherapist.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty of it all.
Yes, exactly.
I like it. So we're back and ready to buckle up for this emotional roller coaster you mentioned. They're putting on this show, they're projecting that confidence. But what's going on internally?
Yeah.
Are there moments where even these experienced hypnotherapists start to doubt themselves?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They talked about feeling those really classic signs of nervousness,
Right.
The tightness in their chest, maybe their breathing gets a little shallow, especially, if it's a complex case or if the session's just not going as planned.
Oh, I can only imagine. It's like that feeling you get before a big presentation, but amplified because you're dealing with someone else's well-being.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do they work through that?
Well, a lot of them actually use the same tools that they teach their clients.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like mindfulness, for example.
Okay.
One hypnotherapist actually mentioned doing a quick grounding exercise right before a session.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Got to get centered, got to be present.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about calming those nerves, though, right?
Yeah.
They talked about how when that confidence kicks in, it brings this feeling of empowerment.
Okay.
This feeling that they have the tools to really, really help their clients.
Like they're not just reading from a script at that point.
Right.
They're really present.
Yeah.
Invested in the outcome.
Yeah. And one hypnotherapist even used the word joy.
Wow. Okay.
When describing, when they were really feeling that confidence flow, it was like they had access to this incredible toolbox of techniques and ideas that they could really tailor to that specific client in that moment.
I like that that toolbox analogy because it brings us back to that jazz metaphor we were using before.
Yes.
You have the structure, you have the melody, but then you can riff and improvise based on, what's happening.
Exactly.
But I imagine there's still those moments where the self-doubt creeps in and it can kind of throw a wrench in that whole creative flow.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. One hypnotherapist described it as this like plunge.
Oh, wow.
This feeling of like suddenly,
Yeah.
I'm failing this client.
Oh, man.
And it can be really jarring.
It would be. Especially, if you're in the middle of a session with someone and you're trying to project that confidence and then internally you're like...
Right. It's like that imposter syndrome, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that moment? Do you just power through?
Well, it's more about reframing. I think one of the therapists talked about using that NLP principle of no failure, only feedback.
Okay. I've heard that phrase before, but break it down for me.
Yeah. So NLP stands for neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay.
Which is kind of a mouthful.
Yeah.
But it's this whole approach to communication and personal development. And basically at its core, it's about how our thoughts, our language, and our behavior all kind of interact and influence each other. So no failure, only feedback in this context means looking at those setbacks as opportunities to learn and adjust rather than just like personal shortcomings,
Right. So like turning those oops moments into something valuable.
Yeah, valuable lessons.
Right.
And I think that's something they all kind of emphasized.
Yeah.
Is that, even the most experienced hypnotherapists, they will make mistakes.
Of course. We're all human.
Exactly. It's just about how you respond, right?
Right.
Do you kind of retreat or do you use it as an opportunity to learn?
So they have to be really resilient, I would imagine.
They do. And they use a lot of these tools, seeking out supervision from, more experienced colleagues, practicing mindfulness. Some of them even said that they use self-hypnosis.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Hypnotherapy on themselves.
To manage their own anxiety about, messing up or making mistakes.
That's dedication.
Yeah, they're really practicing what they preach.
That's great. I love that.
And because, when you think about it, if you're guiding people through their own, mental and emotional landscapes,
right,
you need to be able to navigate your own pretty darn well.
Yeah, you got to be comfortable in your own mind to guide someone else through theirs.
Exactly. And all of that internal work that they're doing, it translates to better outcomes for their clients,
Okay.
Because one thing that this research found is that, confidence isn't just about the hypnotherapist feeling good.
Right.
It directly impacts the client's experience and ultimately the success of the therapy itself.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. How does a confident hypnotherapist actually lead to better outcomes for the client? So a more confident hypnotherapist equals better client outcomes. How does that work in practice in an actual session?
Well, it creates a stronger rapport from the get-go. When a client can sense that the hypnotherapist is confident they're capable, they're more likely to trust them.
Right.
And when they trust them, they relax more deeply into the whole process.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you don't think the hypnotherapist believes in it, why should you?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I imagine it goes beyond just feeling comfortable, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like you're picking up on their ability to be present with you in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. They talked about really being able to listen and adapt to the client's needs in that moment.
Yep. So more flexible, less rigid, like you're not just sticking to a script no matter what.
Exactly, yeah. They're more likely to kind of try new techniques, maybe push the boundaries of their own comfort zone a little bit.
Okay.
Because they trust their instincts.
So confidence breeds, like more willingness to experiment, to try new things.
Yes, absolutely. And one of them even said that as they got more confident, they felt like they could take on even more challenging cases,
Wow, so it's like confidence is almost like a permission slip
Yeah.
to grow and evolve as a practitioner.
I think that's a great way to put it, yeah. And all of that benefits the client in the end.
Right.
Because they have, potentially more healing, more growth themselves.
It's like this positive feedback loop again where everyone benefits.
Exactly.
Okay, so we know confidence is key.
Yeah.
But how do they actually get there?
Right.
Is it just something you're born with, or are there things that they do like actively to build that confidence?
Well, like most things, I think it's a bit of both, nature and nurture.
Yeah.
Some people might just naturally be more confident.
Right.
But everyone we talked about, or that the researcher talked about, I should say, really emphasized experience. Like every successful session, every positive outcome
Yeah.
added to their confidence bank.
So it's like practice makes perfect.
Kind of, although it's not just about like going through the motions, right? It's about reflecting on those experiences, understanding why something worked or maybe why it didn't work.
Right, like actively turning it into a learning experience.
Exactly, yeah. And they talked about always striving to learn new things. So they would go to conferences, they would read books on hypnotherapy. Some of them even had mentors.
Wow,
They really had this thirst to keep learning and growing.
So it really sounds like confidence, at least in this field, is less about some innate thing you're born with and more of a process
I think so.
of constantly, learning and practicing and reflecting.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
That's really interesting. And, the researcher also talked about modeling, and I know that might sound a little weird, but it's basically like watching other skilled hypnotherapists in action.
It's like an apprenticeship almost, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like, watching the master and picking up like little tips and tricks.
Yeah, drawing inspiration, but then finding your own style, your own way of doing things.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that. Okay, so this might sound even weirder, but the research actually talked about failure as being a key element
Oh, interesting.
in building confidence.
Okay.
What's that all about?
Yeah. Tell me more.
So the hypnotherapist talked about how those moments where things didn't quite go as planned, those oops moments, they actually ended up being the most valuable learning experiences.
It's like that saying, you learn more from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. Or, there's no such thing as failure, only feedback.
Right. That NLP principle again.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really about how they're framing those setbacks.
Okay, so it's about using those inevitable setbacks as fuel to grow.
Yes, 100%.
Instead of letting them, crush your confidence.
And some of them actually said that it forced them to get more creative.
Oh, okay, interesting.
To think outside the box a little bit more because they had to,
Right, you got to come up with a new plan, a new approach.
And ultimately, they said that those challenges actually deepened their understanding of hypnotherapy.
Wow.
Because they had to really, think on their feet,
It's like they learned how to dance with the discomfort.
Exactly.
Which is a good skill to have in any profession, really, but especially one like this.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
This has been so fascinating. So what we've learned is that confidence in hypnotherapy is not some, fixed trait you're born with.
Right.
It's this dynamic interplay of experience and learning and mentorship.
Yeah.
And even, embracing failure as part of the process.
Which is something I think we can all, kind of take away from this.
Yeah, it's a good life lesson. It really is.
No matter what field you're in.
Well, I think this has been a really incredible deep dive.
It has been
If
fascinating.
you had to pick one thing, one takeaway for our listeners, what would it be?
I think it would be that confidence is a process, It's not something you just magically have one day.
Yeah.
And even if you don't feel confident, you can work towards it.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. Exactly.
Love that. Well, that is a wrap on our deep dive into the world of hypnotherapy and the power of confidence.
It's been a pleasure chatting with you as always.
Likewise. And to our listeners, as always, thank you so much for joining us on another deep dive.
Until next time.